Hi, I'm Tom Migot from Tom Migot Photography, and I'm back. I'm back from my holidays, and I have Lightroom 6 with me. Yes, you guys have been waiting for a long time, and so have I. So I'm so excited to talk to you about it. Today we're just going to go through some of the features, the new features in Lightroom 6, as well as one particular one. And I'm going to do multiple episodes talking about Lightroom 6, going into the detail of some of those very interesting new features. So going through the list, what do we find in Lightroom 6? Well, a new splash screen. You have it on your screen right now. That's the new splash screen. So pretty I quite like it. I like the fact that it's no longer some kind of a fancy design, but it's actually a proper photograph. I really like this. And more seriously, with regard to the new features, what do we have? Well, now Lightroom 6 actually going to utilize your graphic processor of the computer you're going to be using. So, and to see this, you can actually go in Lightroom in the preferences, and you'll see that there's a new module or new menu. It's preference, and by default, it's actually ticked. And you see use graphic processors. So Adobe claims that this is going to improve your experience by 10%, meaning 10% more powerful, faster to render your images, faster to apply any changes that you actually make to your photograph in a develop module and so on. So this is a fantastic good news. The next one is about the previews. You know those little previews of your photograph that usually builds as you import your photograph in? Well, now there's a new feature, and you can find it in the catalog settings, and it's actually pretty cool. It's here, the standard preview size. You know, sometimes it's a bit tricky. You don't really know how big you want your preview to be and so on. Well, now there's a new mode, and it's the auto mode, and it will define the correct size to match your screen, to get a full screen view of your photograph. So earlier I used to be on 2048 pixels, and now it jumped up to 5120 pixels. But I've changed my iMac, so that must be also a reason. But that's good news. So something that you don't have to worry about. Another functionality as well is the auto crop. When you are in the develop module, and we'll talk about it more soon, but here you have a new auto button here that will level your photograph, and that's a really good thing. Another thing is about the brushes. You know, the adjustment brush, the one that you have here in the develop module. Well, let's say you actually apply brushes on someone's eyes, and then you want to somehow reposition it. Well, now you can, and we'll have the opportunity to show this as well in another episode. Another good thing, you're probably familiar with the brush overlay. So that basically makes an overlay mask to show you exactly where you went with your brush. That's an amazing feature. I've been using it all the time when I use the brush. Well, now you can also change the color, and that's really interesting because depending on the background color of your image, you may want to use either red, white or green to see better where you actually applied that adjustment brush. So now you can change this. For those of you who do soft proofing, and I will need to talk about soft proofing. I've never covered soft proofing. I've talked about screen calibration, and that kind of goes along. But I need to talk to you about soft proofing, and maybe I will use the opportunity of Lightroom 6 to talk about it, because with Lightroom 6, you can finally use the CMYK profile. So for those of you who have been using CMYK, well, now you can do it inside Lightroom, and you can do the soft proofing. You don't need to go to Photoshop to do this. So this is a great news. Another functionality that you find is red eye. Red eye per se is not new. You see, it's this functionality here, but you have a new one, and it's called pet eye. And the reason is because when you have the light going straight into the face of your subject, you'll notice that you end up having some red eyes. Well, if you do the same thing with animals like dogs and cats, you'll see that they don't get red eyes. What they'll get is something more or less white, creamy, and so on. And so applying the red eye to it, it could work, but it's not that great. So now you've got a pet eye, and I'll talk to you more about this because now you can even have catch light in the eye when you use the red eye, which is great. That prevents having just a black spot covering the redness. So great new feature. Another one for those of you who have touchable screen. And so touchable screen, meaning that your screen actually reacts when you touch it, because I can touch my iMac, but it doesn't do anything. So if you're one of those Windows users, for example, who have those new laptops and so on, where you can actually press directly on the screen, well, Lightroom recognizes the touches and will enable you to rate and do different things with that. So go check it out if that's something that you use. There's been changes in the web module where you can create a web gallery. So there's there's new galleries added to the list. Some changes as well with the book section, the book module, but it's minor. And same with the slideshow, it's minor. You can add extra music and this kind of thing. And then you have what I would consider the 4 most amazing thing that you've got in Lightroom 6. The first one, you may think it's a gadget, it's the face recognition. But I do not think it's a gadget. The map, on the other hand, that they've introduced in Lightroom 3 or Lightroom 4, that was a gadget. But the face recognition, for me, I specialize myself in portraits. So if I have Lightroom 6 tagging all my customers, directly finding all their faces, and I can put a name on it, and then I can search in the keywords for it, that's going to be fantastic. So I'll do a video talking about face recognition. So that's the first one. The next one, it's the ability to, are you sitting? The ability to do photo merge inside Lightroom, meaning that you can do HDR and you can do panorama. Yes, you no longer need to go from Lightroom to Photoshop and back to Lightroom, or use a different plugin or a different third-party app. You can do this directly inside Lightroom, and we'll talk in this very same episode. We're going to talk about HDR, so stay tuned. Finally, one of the most amazing features I have been waiting for, it's the ability to use an adjustment brush when you use a graduated filter or a radial filter. And I talked about it in the very next episode. This is fantastic. To me, if there was one feature that we got to get right, that was it, and it works and it's fantastic. So stay tuned as well. So I'm really excited. This is fantastic. It's not one of those little updates just like this. This really some really concrete stuff here in Lightroom 6. So let's dive in. I've been playing around with Lightroom 6 over the past week or so. And as a matter of fact, for those of you who follow my work, you may have seen this photograph, which is the latest one. And it's the witch house that I've just captured in France during my holidays. And I've done this using Lightroom 6, but it's worth noting that I haven't used any new feature of Lightroom 6 to do that, to edit it. Everything could have been done in Lightroom 5 exactly the same way. But nonetheless, it was a good exercise to do it in Lightroom 6 and see what other things have changed. So good things here. Today, I want to talk to you about HDR. HDR is something that I've never talked about in the past, and the reason is because I do not do much HDR. In fact, I barely ever do HDR, and there are reasons for that. The reason is simply that I have a great camera. I've got a 5D Mark III. It's got a great dynamic range. And for those of you who don't know what a dynamic range is, it's basically the scale going from the darks to the brights, and that scale, that range, how much of the darks you can collect and how much of the brights you can collect in one single image makes the dynamic range. As camera improve, the dynamic range expands, and that's a great thing. But sometimes you are faced with a situation where there's too much contrast, there's too much detail in the darks and too much detail in the brights that you cannot cut in one shot. You cannot capture it all, and that's why HDR comes in. HDR consists basically of taking multiple exposures, you can say maybe going from underexposed to overexposed of the same subject, combining all of them, merging all these resulting images together using a third-party tool, using Photoshop, and now using Lightroom to actually get the overexposed image revealing the details from the shadows, and using the underexposed image to tone down the overexposed image. And the end result is basically an image that is going to be extremely rich in detail. That's the reason why it's always appreciated when you do urban or architectural photographs. It gives you all that texture, and that's a great thing. For me, the reason why I'm not crazy about it is because it's been used so much out there on the web. Just type HDR on Google and you'll see. And to me, people have been using it so much that the end result is sometimes very worthy of the 1980s pop art. Too flashy for my taste. It's just a bit too much if you ask me. But that's just me. So that's the reason why I don't really do much HDR. There are some people posting HDR on my Migot Photography Club, and sometimes it's great. And when it's great, it's because I do not know it's an HDR. I see a picture with great quality, great details, texture and everything, and they told me, well, it's HDR, and I said, that is a great work. So that's how I see HDR. And you could do HDR in the past using Photoshop, for example, and other products, and you could start from Lightroom. So as I don't do HDR, I had to basically dig back into my materials and find some pictures that I could use to illustrate what HDR is and how to do this in Lightroom 6. So I found those 5 images taken in London last October, actually 2014. And what you see here is an overexposed image. If I bring the develop module, you're going to see where it's all burned out. And then you've got some underexposed image like this one. And it gets a little bit better, and then a little bit better, and then a little bit better. So we kind of have a graduation of all the exposures here. But you know, you could do HDR, especially if you shoot through. You could do HDR with 2 photographs, the overexposed one and the underexposed one, and you could even make an HDR with 1 single raw file. And I'll talk about it in a different episode, but basically here in Lightroom you would create a virtual copy, make some modifications, select the virtual copy and the original one, and then do what we're about to do here to create an HDR out of it. So that would still work just the same. So in order to do HDR, you can be in the develop module or you can be in the library module. All you need to do is select at least 2 images. Here we're going to select 4 of them. And you either do a right click, and normally in the past you would do edit in, for example, Photoshop, and here you had merge to HDR Pro in Photoshop. But now you see there's a new module, menu, sorry, here says Photo Merge HDR or Panorama. Panorama, we'll see this in a different episode, but HDR. You can also do, as soon as you selected your photograph, you can go into the photo menu at the top here and just go to Photo Merge HDR. And I do this, and here we go, we got a new window. This is a brand new window. It does not exist in the other version of Lightroom, and it's the HDR window. And what you see here is creating the HDR preview. But let's look at a second at the options you have on the right. Auto align. Well, it's self-explicit, really. You're going to have multiple exposures. So if, unlike me here, I used a tripod, but if you didn't use a tripod, chances are that if you look at all the photographs that you've got, chances are that the angle is going to be slightly different. So by ticking this, you're going to make sure that all the layers, all the photographs are going to be exactly matching the same angle. Make sure you use the same focal length because otherwise it's not going to work. Auto-tone. Auto-tone, basically what it is, it corresponds to the auto-tone option in Lightroom, in the develop module. That's basically the basic panel here. And it's going to just decide what he thinks that is going to be better in terms of result. You can disable it, you can enable it, it's fine. And anyway, it's no carved in stone because you can just go, once we click merged here, we'll go back in Lightroom and you can modify everything. So it's absolutely fine. The next one is deghost amount. When you do HDR, because you're going to take several images, especially if you don't do the fake HDR with 1 single raw file. If you take multiple exposures, chances are that you're going to have some people walking in your scene or maybe cars, traffic. And so having all the layers, all the pictures put on top of each other, what's going to happen is you're going to have this ghosting effect, which is a blurry effect of this moving subject. And so deghosting is basically removing all these blurry bits. And here you have different level, none, low, medium, and high. Given the subject here of my photograph, I don't have any people walking on that bridge. I do not have any car. I don't have anything in movement. So it doesn't change. It doesn't matter if I'm on none, low, medium, or high. It doesn't change anything. The only reason I'm on high here is to show you that as soon as you select anything but none, you will have show deghost overlay. And that's great because it will basically show you where the deghosting has been applied. Here, nothing has been applied, as I explained it just before. To show the overlay is the same option as anything else in Lightroom when it comes to overlay. It's just O. So if you do the letter O, it will show the overlay. So we're happy with this. We click merge, and what is going to happen now is creating an HDR, and it's going to be a DNG file. It doesn't matter what your initial files are, if it's JPEG or TIFF or whatever, it will create an HDR in DNG format. And that's going to be a 16-bit DNG file. This is huge. This has all the information you need inside, which is brilliant to apply any modification you want in your results. So it's popping up now, and we have it here showing up. This is our HDR right now. So it takes a while to actually render it, but look at all the details. It's really interesting. If we want to put side by side with the overexposed one, so bear with me a second. It's just going to the library module. And I think it's a little bit slow here on my computer because I'm recording as well. I've got this app recording the screen and it's slowing things down. So obviously we get more details now in the highlights. And now if we actually just compare it to the underexposed, that's easy. But comparing it to the one that was really overexposed and this one. Here we go. Actually, made a mistake here. Okay, so what you see here, we clearly have more details. The shadows, we look at this. Every detail from the shadows is brought back in, and it's really, really nice. So this is HDR. In the very next episode, what I want to talk to you is about the very next feature that I just mentioned before. It's about the graduated filter, but more importantly, the adjustment brush that has been added to the graduated filter. And we'll see how we can go from a picture like this one, which is our like this one, which is the HDR we just produced, going from here to this one. It's the same image, it's the same HDR, but I'm using only the graduated filter with the new brush, adjustment brush. So let's stay tuned for the next episode, and until then, this is Migot saying, if you like it, well, capture it, but edit it in a new Lightroom 6. Ciao.